Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Curse: The Eye of Isis for Xbox, published by Dreamcatcher in 2003. It was also released on Windows and PlayStation 2. This is a third-person survival horror game that is set in a museum in 1890. As such, the game relies heavily on setting. The weapons are going to be older, the clothing is going to be older, details and just general things that are kicking around are going to be older. I think it gives this game a relatively interesting and unique look, and I think the graphics in the game look pretty great too, especially for the time. The story kinda goes like this. In a museum, there is this Isis exhibit, and apparently there is a curse associated with some Isis statue. Your family is somehow part of this curse, and that means you. Basically, you need to get your hands on the statue and figure out how to break the curse. It's a simple enough premise with no extraordinary mechanics. The story is actually kind of basic, and maybe a little bland even. At the end, they actually try to throw in some sort of a surprise kind of a twist. It's a total throwaway. Totally wasted and useless to the plot. Overall, this game feels a little more like a cookie-cutter adventure. I feel like I should start with my complaints on the game. The game is okay overall, but there are definitely some things that pull me down and I think are noteworthy. First, the map and map system. You spend a sizable amount of time in the museum. The bulk of the game, actually, and the layout of this building is confusing as hell. If this is a real museum, it's confusing. The camera angles are going to switch on you sometimes. When you're in a room even, just walking around, it can actually confuse the direction you're trying to go. There are a few staircases that are really a mess when it comes to this. Trying to keep your orientation when the camera's flipping, not easy. Now, I've played almost all of the classic Resident Evil games, which are mostly the same basic style of game as this, and I've been able to memorize plenty of maps. But for some reason, this museum is overly difficult to understand. I just keep finding myself wasting tons of time running around. An abnormal amount of time, just trying to get to some place that I've already been. It shouldn't be this hard to get around in a game. Now, they do offer you a map screen to look at, which you would totally think would be the perfect solution. But no, this one is close to useless. It's too small, it's in pieces, and you can't switch between the pieces or even move them around. I tried all the buttons to adjust what I'm looking at. The functionality just isn't there. I don't need to know the small area of the two rooms that are connected. That's easy to understand. I need to know how to get from where I am to a destination in a totally different place. I find myself looking at the map 10 times in a row, and I'm still struggling to get where I need to go. I think this is even a bigger deal, considering the only way you can actually record your progress in this game is to save the game. You save this by visiting your friend. He's going to wait for you in various rooms as you progress through the story. Have fun trying to run all the way back through this annoying maze just to find your friend. Just so you can save the game. It feels like it does get a little easier in the last part of the game, maybe because the maps are a little smaller, but the bulk of this game is going to be in the museum. This is the part of the game that's supposed to get you hooked. It's a hassle. I think if they offered a better map system, maybe, it would have gone a long way for making this one easier to play. Another complaint. It just feels like there's not a ton of artwork in this museum. I've been to plenty of museums. I just feel like there should be more stuff hanging on the walls in this one. A lot of the hallways just seem to have empty wall space. It's minor. The last thing I kind of don't like in this particular game are the weapons. I mean, the guns just don't feel as powerful as they should be. Using this pistol, it's kind of clunky, and it just feels weak compared to your handheld club. I don't know, it makes the power of these weapons feel a little imbalanced. I finished this game thinking that I could have defeated most of the enemies in this game with just a club. And I'm playing on normal. It just didn't feel like it was that difficult. I could run up next to somebody with a club, hit them 3 times and they fall over. Or I could shoot them 5 times with a gun. I'm sorry, I just think the gun should destroy somebody much quicker than a club. When I got to the end of the game, by the time you get used to the mechanics, I also had the distinct feeling that there wasn't much danger after a while. It seemed like it was harder early on, just understanding the mechanics on how to shoot people, but by the end of the game, after getting comfortable with the mechanics, the enemies just became no problem, even the bosses. But there are things that I like about this one. Now, I'm personally not fully sold on wanting to play an adventure that's set in the early 1900s. It's just not that exciting an era to me. But the details in this game, they feel reasonably genuine to that period, and I think they work. Also, eventually you switch characters in this story, and then the game proceeds you playing different characters. I think this is a great idea. You can also switch items between these two characters, which is also great. It certainly makes the game more interesting, and I think it makes it a little less monotonous. It also handles reasonably well. Not amazing, but pretty good. These aren't tank controls like in the classic Resident Evil games like I originally expected. But you run around pretty smooth, and getting around isn't that much of a struggle past the horrible map system, which I'm going to double down on now and once again say it was confusing for the majority of the game. Maps upon maps upon maps, just too confusing. Okay, back on track. You basically have two health meters that you have to worry about in this one. You have your standard health, of course, but you also have a curse meter that fills up. As you interact with cursed enemies, if you touch them or they hit you, or when they die they release this yellow fog, it fills up your curse meter. When the curse meter gets too full, it starts to correlate to your health, and it starts to drain your health slowly. This means you have to pay attention to both meters. I'm okay with this added complexity. I thought it worked well enough, although the last half of the game, it seemed as though this extra meter was of almost no consequence. And I can't tell if I just got that much better at managing it, or if they just weren't leveraging that enough. Early in the game when I didn't understand it, I died a few times because of this curse meter. Not at the end of the game. At the end of the game, I barely had to do anything to pay attention to it. Kind of imbalanced. For an original Xbox game, I think it does look good, and this is what I would expect. The graphics on the Xbox were the top of that particular generation, and they use a lot of really good textures here, and it really makes things look great on screen. They put some care into these graphics, just maybe not enough care into the arrangement of the maps. You fight a few different types of enemies in this one, but we don't have a gigantic variety. You get thugs, you get mummies, and you get maybe 3 different creatures in the sort of end stages that are kind of like bosses. I don't know. They might have benefited from adding more variety in this area. Probably would have made it feel a little more, I don't know, impending. We get a few different type of boss creatures, but nothing was ever too difficult to destroy. And honestly, after you get comfortable with this game, you really don't die much. I think I died maybe once or twice at the beginning, and once I understood the curse meter, maybe I died in battle once, maybe twice. I just found myself at the end of the game with tons of ammunition and healing items. First time I got to the end boss, matter of fact, the last like 2 or 3 bosses, I beat them outright. So maybe this isn't the toughest of games when it comes to that aspect. It almost feels like this was planned to be a survival horror game, but after it's all said and done, it kind of feels more like an adventure as opposed to something that's horror-based. There really aren't any scares in this one that I can pick out, but from the looks of the game, from the colors, the darkness, it seems like it wanted to be scary on some level. It just never really was. Overall, I think the game's okay. I mean, I am glad I finally got through playing it, but it was a middle-of-the-road experience for me, and I can't see myself wanting to pop this in and run through it again anytime soon. I basically spent the last couple of weeks beating Resident Evil 4. I think I beat that 3 times on 2 different systems. That was fun to play. This one, I picked up, and I put it down for a few weeks. I almost had to force myself to pick it back up. I was also surprised to find out that this game actually commands some money on the secondary retro market right now. On eBay, the prices start at like $70 right now. I only have a disc and a manual, and they still are asking a high price for this. I guess that brings me to the question, is this game worth like $70 or more? And I would definitely say no. Unless you're looking to get a complete Xbox collection, I would skip buying this one on the Xbox. I'm a horror fan, and as much as I love getting horror games, somewhere the reality of paying for something comes into the picture. This one just isn't worth such a high asking price. If you do want to play it, I would suggest buying it on Steam. I would also suggest looking at a run-through on YouTube, probably at the same time you're actually playing the game. It might be the only way to understand exactly how to navigate through this map of the museum. Well, that's all I have today for Curse the Eye of Isis for Xbox. If this video is your type of thing, please feel free to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and thank you for watching. Hope to catch you on another video.